Hey guys, since we're not going to have class tonight, I figured I'd go through a few things that would help you make your outline for next Thursday, just in case anyone's having any questions about that. So what I'm going to go through are thesis statements. So what should your thesis statement be like for this essay? And then I'm going to give you two options to organize it and give you some ideas for which option for organizing you might want to use depending on what you're writing about. So first things first, your thesis for this essay, which I think everyone should probably be clear about by now, should be specific and also should be debatable. You're presenting a point of view, a stance on a topic, so you want to be really clear about where you stand and what your position is, what should be done about the problem, or what action should people take. So it might end up being in like a blank should blank format. You want to make sure you're being clear. So just to give you an example, let's say you want to write about organ donation. So you do some research and you find out that of all the people waiting on organ donation lists, only X amount, which is small, actually get the organs, and then you find out X amount, which is pretty big, are people who are on the list, who end up dying in the meantime while waiting. So you want to think about some strategies for how we can have more people donate organs, how we can make that more effective, so we have less numbers of people who either don't get them or who end up, dying as a result of not getting the organ while on the list. So your thesis statement for a topic like that, let's say, you do some research and you find out about a program that other countries use called an opt-out donation process. Right now the U.S. uses an opt-in process, which means, when we go to the DMV, we see, we're getting our license renewed, or for the first time, we get to choose if we want to be an organ donor. Well, the opt-out process would work similarly to that, but instead of choosing whether you want to be an organ donor, you'd have to mark off if you don't want to be one. So if you don't mark off that you're an organ donor, you're kind of presumed to give consent to it. So if something does happen to you and you do pass away and you never said, no, I don't want to be an organ donor, I have an objection to it, then doctors have the right to use your organs to transfer to someone else or to use for, come up with scientific research to come up with cures. So that's my argument. U.S. should switch to that system because I think that would up the number of people who donate organs. So my thesis statement for that would be something like, the U.S. should switch to an opt-out donation policy to increase numbers of donors and decrease the number of recipients waiting on a list who don't get the organs. Bam, end of sentence. So that's specific. It tells exactly what I think should be done. It's clear about the problem, and it also shows what I think might be a result of the problem, which would help the solution. So that's the thesis statement out of the way. If you have any more questions about that, feel free to email me. What I want to go through now are two organization options for the outline that's due next week. So the first one is called the Rogerian method. It was developed by this guy named Carl Rogers, no relation to Mr. Rogers, the guy from the TV show. But Carl Rogers, he was a psychologist. So psychologists are interested in understanding people. So this method is kind of built on understanding your opposition and trying to find common ground with a topic, a solution that would make the most amount of people happy, kind of like a compromise, but not really. So with that said, if you choose this method, how you'd start is you'd still have your intro, with your hook and background information about the topic, significance about it, why should people care about solving this problem, and then your thesis statement. After that, you want to start your first paragraph with the counter argument. So what does the opposition think about this topic? And then after that, you can refute it. So explain why you feel like despite, understanding the other side, you still feel that the option you're presenting would be better for everyone in the long run. So your first paragraph would be your counter argument and your refutation, and then your paragraphs after that would be the steps of your argument itself. And then the last one would be, conclusion, which kind of be standard based on other papers we did. Restate your argument, remind them. So for this option, it's important to be objective in your counterargument and refutation in the first paragraph. You don't want to, have a tone that kind of puts out your audience. You're trying to show that you legitimately do understand their point of view or why they think the way they do. And you kind of want to have that kind of tone throughout. You don't want to be badgering or assaulting them. You can't assault people with words. Well, I guess you can, but aggressive, I mean. So that's the Rogerian method, is intro, a thesis, counter-argument, and refutation, and then however many points you have for your arguments, and then your conclusion. So yeah, Rogerian over and done with. Last one we have is the classical argument structure, and the classical argument structure was used by a lot of the ancient writers. Usually the ancient Greeks use this a lot, like Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. They taught their students this model. It was supposed to be then, it was used mostly in speech. People would give their arguments to a group of people to try to persuade them. Now it's been kind of transferred over to writing, although speech definitely uses it as well. So with the classical argument structure, you are starting with your intro and your thesis, just like with the Rogerian model, but your first paragraphs will be making your argument. So, paragraph 1, you'd probably want to start with maybe your least effective argument and save your, argument you feel is the strongest till the last, because it's the last thing people read. So keep it with them. So, your paragraphs will kind of go in this order of like ascending importance or strength. So one paragraph for each point of your argument. And then your last body paragraph will be about your counterargument and refutation. So in that last body paragraph is where you want to anticipate anything that your audience might have questions about or say against what you've been saying, and refute it. So explain, yes, this is what might someone say, against what I've just said, but here's why I still feel that what I've said is, the best option or more appropriate. And then your last paragraph would be your conclusion. So yes, you want to make sure, no matter which of these strategies you choose, if you choose the Rogerian model or the classical model, that you are being really clear about your arguments, taking the audience step by step through your thought process, so they can get to the conclusions the way you did and see how you got there. You also want to be sure that when you're taking up the counter arguments, that you're anticipating the most important ones. Because with writing, it's different if we're having, when we have discussions in class, if you disagree with somebody, you guys can have an exchange back and forth so you can respond to each other. But in writing, you don't have that immediate exchange like that. Somebody could respond to you, but it's going to take probably some time for that to happen. So you want to anticipate before you get that response what somebody might say. Because they're reading it thinking, well, what about this? And then you say, oh, well, this. And it's like, yeah, that's what I was just thinking. I wonder how they're going to handle that. And then you put it out there. So that's that part. You also want to make sure that you are, in your introduction, explaining the background for the topic. Like, for example, if I am going to write about that organ donation topic that I just put out there, I'd want to see, what's currently being said about that. Has anyone recently tried to put something through Congress to change organ donation policy? How did it work out? Etc. So get that out there. The last thing I want to go through is, well, which strategy do I use? Should I use Rogerian model or should I use the classical model? And what I would say to that in response is that you should choose, what you choose kind of depends on what you're writing about. The Rogerian model is really good if you have a controversial topic, something that generates a lot of heated discussion, something that people have a lot of strong opinions about. And the reason why it works better for a topic like that is because, you need to remember that your audience disagrees with you. So, if you're writing about one of those heated discussions and you're trying to convince somebody who doesn't agree with you to adopt your viewpoint, half of your battle is getting them to listen to you first, right? So you want to kind of create this atmosphere that causes them to want to listen to you before you kind of make your claim for why they should adopt your point of view. So Rogerian model is good for that because you start with your counter argument. You start with showing that you understand, why they have the opinion that they have, and that establishes that audience connection off the bat. They'll be more willing to listen to your arguments than if you start out with your arguments because they already have that set opinion in their mind. So that's good for that. Classical, I'd say to use. Not that it can't work for a controversial topic, but it's probably best to use if you have a topic that's not that controversial. Classical model would be better. So those are the two structures. That's the thesis statement. So for next Thursday, April 18th, you need to have a draft of your thesis statement and your outline points. So you should know which strategy you're going to use and plan out, each paragraph what you're going to talk about. And I'll be looking at that and giving you suggestions. So if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to email me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And